Welcome back, everybody, to our journey to CCIE with none other than Ronnie Wong of IT Pro TV. My name is Anthony Sequeira, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us for this episode. You know, we've had some intense episodes of this serial here on our YouTube channel, and this one is going to be short and sweet. I just wanted to mention that you really need to start thinking about and planning how you're going to be dealing with adversity. And what type of adversity am I talking about? Well, find out next here in this episode. So Ronnie, when I mention adversity associated with the CCIE, what kind of things do you think of? What do you think is going to represent adversity for you as you go through this pursuit?
Like everything else, right? Life gets in the way where I have to stop and probably pause for a bit of time and then pick up again. I always find it difficult to actually pick back up because everything else is actually kind of swirling around at the time.
Yeah, and boy, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's a classic thing that'll happen is the student makes their study schedule and then life gets in the way and then they can't adhere to the schedule.
Yeah.
Now in their brain, they're freaking out and they're not studying and that freaks them out. So then they start pushing it out of their head. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, they haven't studied. They haven't studied. They haven't studied. They haven't. And thinking about studying causes them great anxiety. So we definitely want to reverse that process. And one of the ways to deal with that adversity is just, if you've got a bunch of meetings or something while you're waiting for the meeting to begin, I always think of the doctor's office, right? While you're sitting there for 30 minutes waiting for the doctor, or the other day, the dentist for me, it's like, why did you call me here at 1 p.m. if you're not taking me till 1:45? What's the deal with that? Why didn't you just have me come here at 1:45? But for that 45 minutes, imagine the studying you could get in. As a matter of fact, Tony Robbins refers to this as net time, and it's called no extra time. And it's really funny because he talks about if you ever looked at all the net time that you could actually carve out, it's a ton of time. I was opposed to listening to audiobooks. And then after like the 50th person told me I was crazy, I gave it a shot in the car when I was driving. And I was like, oh my gosh, I see why this is the rage. This is taking advantage of that net time. I don't have any extra time to study, and now suddenly I've just worked it in with this net time of an hour-long commute where I listen to a podcast explaining VXLAN or whatever technology that I'm struggling with. Yeah. So Ronnie, I love it. That's definitely an example of the adversity that I'm talking about, and we can take steps to deal with it.
Yeah, now having speak of that, right? So when things stop, and actually trying to figure out how to do that. I think another frustration that would really lead to adversity is when you do pick back up, you feel like you have to start all over because it feels like it's been such a long time. So what are some of the mental steps that we can take to say, hey, I know it might have been, let's say 4 days, but how do I pick back up here and go, I need to continue to proceed forward, or do I need to really go back and just restudy everything again? Because I know I can feel like that I've lost more than net time at that point.
Oh my gosh, Ronnie. I got to tell our audience that this is not a planned discussion, and I am not planting these comments and these questions from Ronnie. I'm telling you right now, this is not scripted. Ronnie, this is something else that you bring up that is so incredibly important. I think what our brains tend to do to us is they tend to trick us. We kind of hypnotize ourselves that we don't know it. We've forgotten it. We don't know it. We've forgotten it.
Right.
One of the adversity moments for me in the process was I kept studying layer 2 over and over and over again, right? Because I would pick up and I would be like, oh, I got to practice building the network. And I would build out the layer 2 again and troubleshoot it and build out the layer 2. And then you realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I need to build out the infrastructure with the layer 2 already built at some point. So I stop practicing on the things that I already know, because I can guarantee you're not going to get enough points to pass just on layer 2 in your exam. So even though you're just incredibly proficient with layer 2, and that's important, of course it's important, but that's not all you're responsible for. So yeah, Ronnie, I really had to convince my brain that yes, there are subjects that I can put to bed and that I really do not need to study anymore. Sure, you're going to have an opportunity late in your study to go back and review aspects of that and practice that at the command line again to make sure it's real quick recall. But yeah, we got to avoid that voice in our head that is saying, oh, you forgot everything you learned. You forgot everything you learned. Because that's just not the case. That's just not going to happen to you. Ronnie, one thing that's interesting to me, you've come up with like 2 great aspects of adversity. And I think what a lot of people were thinking when they saw the title of this episode was probably failing the lab exam.
Right.
And yes, that can be a major point of adversity for some people. What happens, I think, is they don't know that the first time pass rate for the exam is as low as it is. They don't even know that. They just figure, oh yeah, if you're really good at this, of course you pass it. And so they get to the lab exam and they fail it. And it is the first academic exam in their entire life that they've ever failed. I know that happened to me. So it was just like this incredibly shocking thing. And then I went and failed it again. And so you can only imagine how devastating that is. After you know how hard it is, you've failed it, you go back to intense studies, and then you fail it again. Now, what in the world could we possibly do to prepare for that? Well, other than saving our money for all those retake attempts, we also have to, again, address our psychology. And my wife, Ronnie, I tell you, she was critical for this with me because I came back from failing it again, got off the plane, got in the car with her, and I said, well, I'm done with that. And she just kind of chuckled. And when we got home, she just sat me down and she said, look, you know you're not going to quit, so stop saying you're going to quit. She said, and you know you're going to pass it one day. So why aren't you focusing on that? And that little feedback from her made all the difference in the world. By the way, I just realized something else that did for me was she just cleared my future work on it, right? That was the permission slip from her, because one of the things I was really worried about was how long is she going to hang in there with my all-day Saturday study sessions where she needs to take our daughter and leave the house. And she was doing that every Saturday with our daughter, visiting friends, visiting family, going to the park, really clearing out. So at the time we had a very small house that we were in, and we had a 3-year-old, so that wasn't conducive to study. So notice all of this adversity can be dealt with, and you need to get yourself prepared for this adversity. This can be so shocking to Cisco students because many of them face no adversity in their entire certification journey. And then they get to this step and they realize, wow, things just got really different really fast. So let's be prepared. Let's, get ready for this adversity. And I know you're going to have specific questions about your own scenarios. And the beauty of YouTube is you can post those below this video. Well, Ronnie, any other thoughts on this topic? I know you're still relatively early in the process, but anything else come to mind on the subject of adversity?
Well, like everything else, like what you mentioned here, is the ability to say, I know I'm going to achieve it one day, but is to always constantly just strive for it regardless of what's going to happen. It may take you longer than you think, and I think that's actually the key, but just, again, talk yourself into the fact that you're going to get it, and it's not a race, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I love what you said there, and there's two schools of thought, right? Some people say, okay, I know I'm going to get it, and I'll just kind of let that work itself out, and then other students can't operate that way, so they're going to say things like, I want to get this by 2022, right? And then they tell themselves that because that's the only way they can get going. Yep, so two schools of thought there. Just remember, there's whatever path you take, there is going to be adversity. Think about it. Think about how you want to deal with it. Well, we're so glad you joined us for this episode of Journey to CCIE. We're going to be making more for you, and we hope you'll be tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube site and click on that bell so you'll be notified each time Ronnie and I get together for another episode of Journey to CCIE. Thank you so much for joining us.